Hello, everyone. I believe this is the first introduction I've ever recorded for an interview in this series. Episode 21 features returning guest James Zimmerman and requires some additional context given the announcement of his lawsuit last week. On July 25th last year, James posted on X that he would be auditioning for the Principal Clarinet position at the Knoxville Symphony Orchestra. Chronicling his journey that lasted around 7 weeks, James posted daily about his preparation leading up to the audition. The process garnered a substantial amount of positive social media excitement, guiding a new audience to classical music, clarinet excerpts, and perhaps most notably, elevating the profile of the Knoxville Symphony Orchestra. It was around this time that I reached out to James, inviting him back on the show after the final audition date. The interview you are about to watch was recorded on September 17th, the day after he won the position in the orchestra unanimously. On September 18th, James received the now infamous email from the CEO at Knoxville, Rachel Ford. We decided to temporarily shelve this episode and wait as he prepared things behind the scenes. Needless to say, this is not about the Knoxville lawsuit. If you're interested in more details about that, you can watch his interview that he recently did with Megyn Kelly, as well as the excellent interview that he did on the Ed Clay Show. This interview is about the immediate reactions of James after winning the audition. We spoke about his preparation, both physically and mentally, for a competition that was as intense as this. We spoke about how to build an audience, how to positively influence the culture through that audience, and that's something, if you've been following him, that he's done quite successfully. I also asked him if he was concerned about working again in an environment that might be potentially hostile towards him, or at least right-wing artists more broadly. I would highly recommend that you pay close attention to his answer to this question. What James has been able to accomplish up to this point is nothing short of miraculous, and it's testament to who he is both as an artist and as a man. After being canceled by the Nashville Symphony, he continued to fight and managed to win another high-profile position with a very competitive orchestra. This sort of thing is unheard of in our field. The scandal caused by Knoxville has been nothing but detrimental to classical music and the arts and the very concept of meritocracy. The person they hired over James was not the best person for that position. Keep in mind that this is not just my opinion, this is Knoxville's opinion. And the audiences that attend their concerts going forward are going to be painfully aware of this very obvious fact. There will be more to say over the coming weeks as the lawsuit plays out. I would encourage you all to go and follow James as he continues to fight this fight publicly, and anything that you can do to support both him and his family, I'm sure, would be a blessing. With all that said, I give you, in his own words, James Zimmerman. James Zimmerman, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you again.
Congratulations are in order. You have won the Principal Clarinet position at the Knoxville Symphony. How does it feel?
Feels great. I can't believe I pulled it off. It was 7 weeks of intense training, trying to dig up my fire from decades ago, the last time I was really out there on the circuit. But I went up against the young guns, and I still got it, I guess.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming back on. This is really cool because the last time we spoke, it's not that your story hadn't been covered, but it was one of the first interviews I had at least seen of you, obviously, because we did it together. Chronicling your story, and now to have this next chapter for people to witness, it's an incredible story. So just to briefly recap, and people can go back and watch the first episode that we did. I forget which episode it was, but we had talked about your background, the controversy that had happened with the Nashville Symphony, and what you were up to currently. And after that, you led a sort of campaign about this revival of your career into this next chapter with this new symphony. So if you wouldn't mind recapping people what you've been up to since we've last spoken, since we've had that last episode, and kind of what inspired you to be moving back into the musical field.
Sure. Well, the last time we talked about how I was ousted from the Nashville Symphony by a political agenda. It's a well-covered story. It's all over the place, especially on your podcast. That's where I've spoken most recently about it. And I reinvented my professional life as a software developer in 2020 out of necessity. I work for a big tech company while also doing plenty of music on the side, mostly as a session player for shows like Netflix and Amazon and films and country music, anything commercial. I have a vibrant session career here in Nashville. And I do a little teaching, but the lion's share of my income comes from tech. And, I didn't really see an easy way back into the orchestra game because auditions are very demanding things, and I wasn't really looking to take one, honestly. Kind of soured on the process as a result of seeing it break down so thoroughly in Nashville Symphony. And standing up in defense of the process got me nowhere except ousted. So I was very soured on it last time I talked to you. However, in 2019, there was a convention here in Tennessee, Clarinet Fest. It's an annual convention, happens every summer, draws clarinetists from all over the world. I had never gone to this thing before, but in 2019, it was hosted at the University of Tennessee. So I figured this was a nice opportunity for me to go to. It'll be easy. It's in Knoxville, which is only a few hours away from Nashville. And at the time, I was the principal clarinetist of the state's biggest orchestra, so I thought I would represent the home team. And I went out there, and there was a great concert that I was a part of with the Knoxville Symphony String Quartet, where I played a new commission, and the former principal clarinetist of the New York Philharmonic, Stanley Drucker, played with the quartet on the same concert. It was a legendary performance, the only time I ever got to see him live play chamber music. He's passed away since then. But in doing that performance, I met some players from the Knoxville Symphony. And one of those players in July reached out to me on Facebook, a guy I hadn't talked to in a few years, and a guy I had only seen a couple times since then on sessions here in Nashville, reached out to me and said, "Hey, man, I've followed all your posts since last we saw each other. And I was just wondering if maybe you'd be interested in coming out and auditioning for the symphony." And I was flattered by the invitation. He was very complimentary of my playing. And I said, I'll think about it. That sounds like I'm open to it. And it was one of those little ideas that I can never get out of my mind. So I kept thinking about it. This seemed like a winnable audition. It's close by. And I thought about logistically what it might look like. I wouldn't necessarily have to relocate. I wouldn't necessarily have to quit my tech job. So I did enough high-level thinking to say, yeah, this is worth a shot. So I decided to do it about 7 weeks ago. And I thought this would be something fun to post about. Just the process of an old guy trying to get it back together. And I thought I would just put the whole thing on X, just see if I could get any engagement out of it. I had really no idea if anybody would think it was interesting, but it got a surprising amount of engagement. And the more I posted, the more people seemed to get invested in it. And I spent the whole 7 weeks just trying to get my act together, went to the gym all the time, just getting my head straight. And yesterday was the culmination of all my efforts, and I came out on top.
And I'd like to stress, especially about the social media posts, for anybody who's not on X or who hasn't been following, it wasn't just a surprising amount of engagement. Hundreds of thousands, if not a few million people have at least been viewing what you've been doing. A lot of, I've noticed accounts have been flocking to your work and inspired by what you've been doing. How has that been with social media? How has that been with this sort of newfound attention that you're receiving in your work?
Well, first of all, it's a surprise. I did not expect as many large accounts to get interested as they did. But, a lot of people were interested in my story, not necessarily because they love classical music, but they see the event as an injustice that's part of a larger movement that the United States is dealing with. That's another topic we kind of touched on last time you and I talked. They're interested in the political ramifications of my story, not because they're necessarily introduced or well-versed in classical music. But I thought this would be a fun way to get people interested in the art form itself, because that is something I believe in as a musician, that everybody has a role to play in maintaining the art form and doing some education however you see fit. For me, it's just talking about my own life in what I'm doing and saying, hey, I'm going to be training for this thing. This is a way to stay accountable to somebody, besides myself, like see if I can get any engagement. And, it all came back to me tenfold with the really insightful feedback and suggestions. And there was a lot of inspiration there. Like I had nothing like this available to me 20 years ago when I was on the circuit. Like, so I got just as much out of it and more as I put into the whole thing. But there was this nagging stress to the whole process. Like, what if I don't win? Which is definitely the likely outcome, because the odds in auditions are so bad. No matter what, the competition is so stiff. There's so many people. There's so many variables. So much luck is needed to win one of these things. I was thinking, what's going to happen if I don't win? It's going to be very disappointing and a little bit embarrassing if I don't pull this off. So every time my mind started to go there, I said, no, you just can't let that happen. You can't lose. You just have to keep getting better. And you have to figure out a way to bring your very best playing. And you have to believe that if you play at the top of your game, it's going to be good enough to win. So there was a huge motivational factor, a psychological factor that was made much more intense and also easier by posting on X the whole way through.
One of the things that we had talked about last time you and I spoke was the process of auditioning and how difficult it is, how sporty it is in many ways. It's blind, it's based on sound alone. This is something that I know became controversial later on. We touched on that last time. We probably don't need to get back into that here. Could you walk people through what it's like day to day training for an event like this?
Sure. So at the beginning, when I decided to do it, there's like the preparatory phase of getting the whole thing together. So the symphony sent me a list of the repertoire, which I was going to be responsible for. It's, probably 15 symphonies and tone poems and a Mozart clarinet concerto that they can ask anything from that list in the audition at any point. So that took a few days, to gather the material and make a book, because I'm not an iPad guy. I don't do much digital stuff. I just made a book, spiral bound it, and kept it with me everywhere. Kept it in my case, kept it on my stand. And so I had to gather the repertoire, and then I had to get into top shape as a player, which means, there's like some workouts you have to do as a player. You have to do technical exercises like long tones or scales, arpeggios, whatever you need to do to keep your playing in prime shape. So, I incorporated that into my routine, and this is not really a part of my day-to-day routine as a session player. Like, I go long stretches without playing in between projects, and as a session player, you're in the studio playing for a maximum of 1 minute at a time, knowing that if you screw something up, you'll get another chance to fix it. So the pressure is actually quite low in recording studios, and your chops don't have to be in, fighting shape. But for an audition, you have to be in fighting shape. So I had to devise a program where I could keep my chops up and be practicing regularly. And I don't have unlimited time to practice. I'm not, a young, hungry kid from college who's got 30 hours a week to practice and is so desperate that he's so hungry, and he has expert teaching and coaching available to him and a whole bunch of other students around him to encourage him. I have none of those things. So I had to figure out how to stay motivated. And like I said, X was a big way of doing it, getting my friends on board and interested in it. But I got into a pretty good routine of, practicing for a couple hours a day, and practicing a lot on Saturdays, and sometimes waking up and practicing before my tech job, and, practicing after my kids go to bed. And it's not an exact science, because sometimes I'm really not interested in practicing at all. I don't feel like it. I'm burned out from a day of hard tech work, and I recognize that too much practicing is detrimental and can be disastrous for your technique. So I just had to kind of figure out how to make the crescendo for the 7 weeks, where you're getting better and better and better, how to taper off properly at the end, which is something I should go into a little bit, because the last week was, I turned a real corner about a week before the audition that helped me win. But in answer to your original question, yeah, just had to figure out a way to be training. And I did a tweet about a month ago where I took one of the montages from one of the Rocky movies, from Rocky 2, when Rocky's, running through the streets of Philadelphia, running up the stairs with all his fans behind him. And I said, this is what it feels like to be training for Knoxville with everybody cheering me on. And I love the Rocky movies. They're very intense, and just getting more and more momentum, people behind me praying for me, whatever they were doing was it was great. I felt like I was carrying a very weighty but positive burden. Like if I won this thing, it would make a huge statement in the industry that you can still go out there and do things. You can win something fair and square on the merit of your playing. And I really wanted to see that happen. So yeah, that's the process. Start by gathering this stuff, make a plan, and then just lots of diligence and execution from start to finish.
Walk me through that last week of the audition, because this is usually, I mean, obviously it's the make it or break it moment. And just from my own experience, the actual audition feels very different, obviously, than when you're practicing, in your bedroom or in a practice room. I mean, there's nerves, people are listening. There's the curtain. It's awkward. What was that like in that last week? And how did you mentally prepare for that last stretch, if you will, in that race?
Okay, so let me talk about the last week of prep first, because I turned a huge corner on the day of the Charlie Kirk assassination. And I'm not going to try to get too political here, but I cannot understate the effect that had on me leading up to the audition. So the audition was on the 15th, Monday the 15th. So a week before that, I was like, okay, here it is. It's game time. I can see it. It's right in my sights. I'm going to do a ton of work in this last week. I'm going to finish strong. And I was in this routine where every day I was recording myself, simulating a round. I have all my recording stuff set up here in my basement. And what I would do was pick a few excerpts that I would think that they would ask, record myself, 10 minutes of my playing back to back without stopping, really trying to make it feel like the audition. And so practicing, if something goes wrong, keep going. If something doesn't go the way you want, do not go back and try it again. Just, because I did not play perfectly in the audition. I'll talk about that later, how it actually went. But, you have to practice for that situation, like pulling yourself out of a rut in the middle of it. So I was doing that at home every day. I would end the day with a practice session, a mock audition. I would upload it to YouTube, send it to a couple friends. I had a long list of people that were interested, so send it to a couple people. Then the next day, I would start my practice session by listening to the previous day's recording, taking notes on everything I wanted to go better, reading my friends' comments. I have a big journal over here of all of those comments. And then I would spend a couple hours, making those fixes and then try it again. And every day would end with that. It was a cycle. And with a new recording, slap it on YouTube, send it out to some people. Probably had like 15 people listen to my tapes. And then I was scheduled to do this again on the day of the Charlie Kirk assassination, and I just could not do it. I could not find the will to practice. So instead, I made a little video of a Bach violin sonata movement arranged for clarinet, made a little montage of it. Really didn't count it as practicing, but my heart was broken. And I was listening to my playing on that, and I was like, this sounds great. That is what I want to sound like. I don't sound like this when I'm preparing for the audition. I want to sound like this stupid post I'm making for Charlie Kirk and the Charlotte stabbing victim. Like that is me playing from my heart. So I took a minute to send. I talked to one of my old teachers, my teacher from graduate school, Burt Hara, who was my teacher. He was in the Minnesota Orchestra and the Los Angeles Philharmonic. He is the mood king of clarinet playing. This guy can make any mood happen in any piece. And that is really what he worked with me on so much in my graduate studies, not my technique so much, but just on the creation of moods and sentiments. And he's so good at that. So he listens to my recording. We're on the phone. He's like, man, you sound like you're just trying so hard. You sound like you're trying to prove something in every excerpt, every entrance. It's like, it's too rough. It's too tight. And I was like, yeah, I am trying to prove something. I'm trying to prove to all these people that I'm the best player at this audition, that I deserve this job. He's like, you need to take a step back. So between Burt's comments and how I played in my Charlie Kirk post, I said, I have to tap in now at the end of this process into my feelings and play from my heart. As corny as that sounds, trying to prove that I'm the best player at this audition is not going to win me this audition. What's going to win me this audition is when I'm the candidate that walks onto the stage and I play Pines of Rome or Rachmaninoff's Second Symphony, and they go, yes, that is what it's supposed to make me feel like. Not like I don't want the committee to say that's what it's supposed to sound like, or that was good execution. It was like, I felt what that music is supposed to make me feel. So at that point, I started practicing a lot less. I started kind of tapering off and just practicing for less time per day. My reads were feeling good. That's another nerdy thing about an audition. You have to prepare your reads. There's no sense talking about that because we will lose people's focus. But everything's really felt good. My technique was in a good place, and I just focused on the moods. And right up until the audition, till the moment I walked on stage, that's what I was thinking about. How to make the right feel happen. Not the right technique, but it was all about the feelings. And I think that's what helped me slam dunk it at the end.
Yeah, I want to get into the actual audition day, and then it was a multi-round audition day. But just to highlight that point, and I'd like to highlight it and underscore it again, because this is important. This is something I've been thinking about. Why do certain musicians, why do certain artists attract the audience that they do? I was listening recently to Mstislav Rostropovich, who's my favorite cellist ever. He's just unbelievable. And I'm biased because I studied with one of his students, so that's why I partly feel that way. But I was listening to him play. It was the Dvorak cello concerto, and it's not perfect. There are some notes he misses. There are some parts that are out of tune, but it's great, and the audience is engaged. And I was thinking to myself, okay, why do people listen to these types of artists and performers? And one of the reasons for that, and I've heard this somewhere, so I'm slightly paraphrasing, but I think it's true. It's not just what they're doing, but it's the way that they are being. It's what they are communicating through their art. It's not a technical exercise. It's an artistic expression. It's not to say then that technique is not important. Technique is very important. And if you're not in technical shape, it doesn't matter, how passionate you are or how communicative you are. It's still not going to be great. But technique alone does not move people. It does not change people. It does not affect people in a way that is positive, that orients them towards something that is good and beautiful, and by definition then true. Now, for your audition day, can you walk people through what that first round was like and then get us all the way through that process?
Sure. So the audition took 2 days. The first day was a preliminary round only, and then I played the semifinal and final rounds yesterday on Tuesday. So I got my preliminary audition time sent to me the week before. It was 2:55 p.m. on Monday. I said, oh man, that is late in the day. That's not a great audition time. I was not stoked about that time at all, because by then the committee's probably pretty tired, but there's nothing I could do about it. So I stayed with a friend on Sunday night. I took a nice leisurely morning, took a walk, did a little practicing, had a nice breakfast. I showed up there an hour before I played, 2:00. And the key thing about a preliminary audition is that you do not have to win the audition in the preliminary round. You have to survive the first round. It's like speed dating. They're just taking a look at you. They're not talking to you. They're not getting a sense for your personality. They're looking to say, hey, this is a pressurized situation. It's an audition. You're on stage by yourself. The crashers and burners are all getting sent home. The boring people are getting sent home. Like, if they're interested in you even a little bit and you execute, I feel like they're going to take you to the next round. So first round had a handful of excerpts, a little bit of Mozart concerto, Beethoven excerpt, and just a wide array of different styles, some legato stuff, some more technical stuff, some loud stuff, some quiet stuff, in a 5-minute span. And I felt like I played fine in the prelims. So after the preliminary round, the personnel manager says to me, okay, if you make it, then we'll be listening to you tomorrow morning. I said, okay, great. Then I can get out of here, right? You'll just text me one way or the other. And he said, yep, you'll get a text message from me in a little while. So I packed up my stuff, was driving back to my friend's house, sweating, and I got the text, and he says, yep, you're playing tomorrow at 10:25 a.m. So I was super stoked at that point, all amped up, because I think, in a way, the preliminary round is the hardest of all rounds, because the committee becomes more and more forgiving as you go on. They're more willing to overlook a technical error if you're doing really well musically and artistically. They don't really have that luxury in round one. Like, if you bomb, they're just going to assume that you don't have the chops to play under pressure. So I was really happy about getting out of the first round. So the next day, woke up, took another walk, had a nice breakfast, showed up at 9:30 in the morning, did some playing, and my semifinal round was absolutely my worst round. I was very worried about getting eliminated after my semis, because the first excerpt I played was Sibelius' First Symphony, which opens with a very quiet, sad, haunting clarinet solo, where it's not technically difficult. It's all about sound. And I should say that the Tennessee Theater has a magnificent acoustic. I was very relieved about this. Nice and live sound. I'm kind of a bright player, so I benefit a lot from halls that have a lot of feedback and live acoustic, as opposed to a dead hall where I could kind of sound like a kazoo. I've run into that problem in certain concert halls I've auditioned in, like Chicago Symphony Hall, Cincinnati Symphony Hall. I just felt in the very beginning of auditions I've taken there that I sound terrible. Like in Knoxville, I was like, I'm sounding great in here. My sound is perfectly suited for here. I have a little test that I do on stage where I just play a couple quiet notes and I listen to how the reverb goes out there. And I knew right away in my first round, oh yeah, this is going to be just fine. I can play quietly in here and I can project my sound to the back of the hall. That's a really difficult thing for people to learn before they have an orchestra job, is how to play quietly in such a way that the people in the back of the hall can still hear you, whispering but projecting. And this hall made it very easy to do. So in the semifinals, started with my Sibelius. It was great. Second excerpt I had to play was from Peter and the Wolf, which is a very challenging excerpt to play in auditions. It's the passage where the cat runs up the tree. It's an awkward technical passage, and my cat tripped on the way up the tree. He didn't fall all the way off, but he definitely stumbled on the way up. But I pulled it together and I finished that excerpt strong. But after the second excerpt, I'm saying to myself, okay, I'm in a bit of a hole here. I have to dig myself out of this. Excerpt after that was the general dance from Daphnis and Chloe, which very technical, very difficult. One of those excerpts that no one's going to really hear you play this in the orchestra because it's not exposed and there's a lot of other stuff going on. But under a microscope, it's very obvious if you rush, if you slow down. So I had a couple bumbles in that too, but I think my dynamics and my musicality made it obvious. I've played this piece a lot of times. I know how this thing goes. It's going to be fine in the orchestra. But then I had to play Pines of Rome. And I knew if I could land the bird perfectly in Pines of Rome, I was going to get out of this round. So I did cash in an absolutely money Pines of Rome to finish my round. And I was very pleased with how that went. My sound was quiet. My legato was flawless. And I just floated the high register stuff and thought, that should be enough. That should be enough to survive. But if I get cut, I will have only myself and my stupid cat from Peter and the Wolf to blame for not getting out of here. So I went back to the dressing room. I played third out of 5 people in the semifinals, sitting in my room, just really sweating. And the guy comes in and says, "Yep, you made the finals." And I was so relieved. And then I had another hour and a half before my final round to wait. So I just chilled for a while, because you can't just sit there nervously in the warm-up room and play. You're going to blow out your chops. You're going to lose your concentration. So I just chilled for a while, just got ready to play the finals. They did not give me the finals excerpt list until 15 minutes before I went out to play. That they did that to keep the playing field level, because if they were to distribute the excerpt list to all 6 finalists, that means the first player only has a few minutes to look at it, and the last player has an hour to look at it. So I cannot compliment the Knoxville Symphony highly enough for administering a perfect audition experience. There was absolutely nothing to object to from start to finish. They really know what they're doing, which is the sign of a highly functioning orchestra. So I'm sitting there wondering what I'm going to play. They bring out the list, and it starts with Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue, which is a big one for me. That's one of my faves. And I'm saying to myself, okay, the finals are the time where you have to go out there and win the job. You're not trying to survive anymore. You are trying to go out there and win. So if Rhapsody in Blue is the number one excerpt, we are swinging for a home run right off the bat, which I did, nailed it, was very pleased with it. So I know I'm in the winning position here. The only other things that I can remember being significant from the finals were my Shostakovich Ninth Symphony slow movement excerpt. Now, in the finals of an audition, you may get some requests from a conductor. He or she might say, hey, could you play that again and pay attention to this dynamic, or can you play it in this style? Because a conductor wants to know not just if you're a good player, are you a good follower? Can you take recommendations? Can you follow? So the Shostakovich Ninth Symphony, that is an excerpt that I posted myself playing multiple times and got into some real deep conversations in my direct messages with a few people about what is the right speed for this thing. There's a wide range of interpretations that you can do this solo at. Like if you found the slowest recording you could find on YouTube and the fastest recording you could find, the fast one is almost double the speed of the slowest one. There's no real decided upon tradition for this thing. It's very mysterious music. So I had settled on one that was kind of faster. I think faster tempos, moving tempos work better in auditions than dragging tempos. So I had settled upon kind of a faster, more like in one waltz tempo. So I played that and I thought it was fine. And I hear the conductor say, okay, can you try this one again? Couple clicks slower on the metronome and just emphasize the loneliness of this. Give it some more dynamic range, give it some more color variation. I said, okay. So I slowed it down significantly and I really stretched my hairpins, just trying to get, if you're playing something slower, you have more time to paint, just more dramatic color. So I did that. And the conductor said, yeah, good. That's the idea. He said good twice. And I was like, I am in control of this audition now. I am in the driver's seat. They are really enjoying my playing. I can tell this is going extremely well. So I went on. And again, when I played the fourth movement from Mendelssohn's Italian Symphony, the Saltarello, that's another very difficult excerpt that has to be crispy, fast, and quiet. That's a very challenging combination for a reed instrument. It's not like an easy string instrument. You just bounce your spiccato. That was a dig. Sorry.
I'm insulted.
It's hard.
How dare you?
Good. I was just wanted to make sure you were listening. No, on clarinet, it's a difficult thing, but I had practiced it, and I thought I did a good job on it, and I played it quietly, and I thought it was even, and I was totally satisfied. The conductor says, can you play that one again with just a little more power at the beginning? Because it starts with a loud, like a big beginning, and then it boils down to being very quiet. There's a number of ways to interpret that beginning. And he asked me just kind of for more impact and then just more power in the articulation, which gave me the license to play louder, which made it so much easier to play short. But I wasn't going to try that off the bat. I was going to try to, Mendelssohn marks its piano dynamics, so I needed to show that. But once the conductor gave me the license to bring up the volume, it was much more crispy. So both times he asked me to do something, I really nailed it. So that is a very helpful thing. And that was where my experience as a player who has played all this repertoire in the orchestra with different conductors at different stages of my career, this is where the young guns are at a disadvantage against a guy like me. So after that, I played Rachmaninoff's Second Piano Concerto, or not Second Piano Concerto, Second Symphony. And that's a long excerpt, which is a 2-minute long solo, very, sweet and dolce and lyrical, and it's just a gorgeous solo. But it's not the kind of thing that ever appears on a preliminary round because there's just no time for a committee to listen to that excerpt. But I had talked about that one specifically with my teacher the week before about where the climax of the phrases, what really just play the whole thing scaled down at a quiet dynamic. This is one of the rare excerpts that is easier to play in an audition than it is in the orchestra because there's no string section to project over. It's a challenging thing. The texture of the accompaniment is thick in the orchestra, so you have to figure out how to play with a piano mood at sort of a mezzo forte dynamic. That can be tricky, but in an audition, there's no one there. There's no conductor to tell you when to breathe or go faster or slower. So I figured if I could finish this strong, I was going to be in a great position to win. And I think that was the best Rachmaninoff second I have ever played in my life. I just was so happy with it. And I went back to the warm-up room. I knew I was the fifth of six players, and I knew that there were three ways this could go. One, I could get eliminated. I did not think that was going to happen. Two, I could be given the job after this. I was hoping that would happen. Three, they could have another round because 6 finalists is a high number. I would say that is the most finalists I have ever seen in one round. So I was staying ready to play another round. I was really gassed by that point. I was, I had left it all out there, but you have to be ready to just go out there and do it again. I've seen that happen a few times in auditions, but I was preparing for that. I was just really hoping that he would come in and give me the job. And that's what he did. He came in and says, "Congratulations, you won." And I was just like, yes, and I told him right away, I came out here to win this audition. I really wanted to win this job. I did not come out here for the experience. I did not come out here just for fun to see what would happen. I came out here because I wanted to be the next principal clarinet of the Knoxville Symphony. And I accomplished exactly what I set out to accomplish, which was to win. And this is still just yesterday. I'm still coming down from an enormous high of this whole thing. And it's very surreal. Like when I cast the micro experience of the intense audition into the entire trajectory of my career and what I've been put through and how hard it's been to sit on the sidelines for 5 years. And looking at the season and seeing that we're playing Rhapsody in Blue, we're playing Petrushka, we're playing Mother Goose Suite. These are pieces that I love and I have missed and had trouble thinking about for the last few years because it's so painful not to be doing this. This is the thing that I do. This was the one thing that I decided to get good at in my life. I have so much to look forward to, and I knew that to have a chance to do it again, I was just going to have to win from behind a screen. So there it is.
I'm so glad I'm talking to you right now rather than like a week or 2 weeks later to get these initial thoughts. It is such a crazy experience. You don't have to answer or comment on this, but I'm curious, has anybody from Nashville Symphony over these past 7 weeks, as you've been gaining more notoriety, reached out, or do they know this accomplishment that you have just achieved?
Well, I did receive a few messages on Facebook, which I don't use Facebook much, but I did post on there that I had won the audition yesterday, and a few of my former colleagues in Nashville, and they're also my current studio colleagues, had some compliments for me. And I don't know how many people from Nashville follow what I do. I don't know if I'm persona non grata. I don't know if there are people there who are my private supporters who can't speak up. I know that there are people that hate me there and who have blocked me on social media and, been disparaging of me publicly at every chance they get. And honestly, I don't care about those people. I'm a musician who wants to share what I do with whoever. So it did feel nice to get some congratulatory messages from those colleagues. I think most people are in agreement. It sucks what happened to me there. It sucks for me. It sucks for the orchestra. It sucks for Music City, and it sucks on a grander level. It made everybody lose a little faith in the blind audition process. And that's part of what this Knoxville quest was for me, was to restore some faith in the process. Like, look, this is the system for getting a job. It's a flawed system. Sometimes great players get knocked out. Sometimes average players win, but there's no better way. So I didn't post anything about what I was doing on any social media profiles except my X profile. I really have, for all its flaws, X is the best platform out there. And it's been the best one for connecting to whatever audience there is for this stuff. You don't really know who your audience is going to be on X. You're trusting the algorithm to pick up your content and distribute it to whomever wants to see it. So, yeah, as far as your question from Nashville, I did get some nice feedback, and I think there are people there who have been rooting for me to figure out a way forward after a disastrous event. Because, like I said when we talked the first time a few months ago, I wasn't some innocent bystander. I picked a fight and I lost. And I don't think it went down fairly at all, but I'm not innocent. I don't like to portray myself as a victim in that situation, even though I kind of was. That's the wrong way to think about it. The way to think about it is I was naive and stupid and not Machiavellian enough, and I've had to harden my heart most of the time. And honestly, I think that is what I figured out that I couldn't do at the end of the Knoxville process. I couldn't go in there too hard-hearted. I had to be vulnerable, and I had to. It was a very vulnerable thing posting publicly about the process, knowing that the likely outcome was not going to be the desired one. I would have to present myself as a guy who tried but didn't dock the boat at the end. But there's real vulnerability necessary as an artist. You have to put yourself out there, and you have to say, this is coming from someplace so deep, I can't even talk about where this is coming from. You just have to hear this. You have to hear it in my sound. You have to hear it in the way that I am when I'm playing. Like, something happens here when I close my eyes and let my sound out. So I think that connected with the committee. I managed to find a way to show them, look, if you hire me for this, you are getting somebody who really gets how this works and gets how to dig deep and bring out the spirit of the music and has the competence and skills to do it. So I think it worked.
Obviously, you have the job, and that's incredible. One of the other things, and I'd be curious to get your thoughts on this, one of the other reasons, rather, that this is a big win, not just for you, not just for orchestras, not just for classical music, but for the arts in general, is that many of these institutions are not friendly. And again, I don't want to make this political, and I'm not attempting to, but it's very fair, I think, to say that the arts, especially institutional arts, are not favorable towards right-leaning or conservative people who have that disposition. You mentioned the Charlie Kirk assassination earlier. We're seeing this play out writ large across our nation and really across the world. I mean, it's not just affected America, although we are Americans, and this is partly where we're coming from. Are you worried about that becoming, or I should say reemerging rather, as an obstacle moving forward in the arts?
No, not at all. I have thought about that, but I don't intend to go in there on my first day of work wearing a MAGA hat or anything like that. I've been hired to do a job there. My job is to go deliver the first clarinet part, and that's it. So that is what I plan to do. I don't plan to be loud. I don't plan to try to get myself elected to any committees right away. I'm not even trying to go there to make a new friend group, though I'm looking forward, obviously, to meeting my colleagues. And the ones I met yesterday seemed incredibly nice and excited, and I got such good vibes from the conductor and all the principal wins and the people that I met. But that is not the job at first. I am on probation. I don't have tenure in this job. I have to go really prove to them now that I am worthy of this position. That is how the process works. The audition is one step on the way to, the winner's podium at the end. I have now been the player that they selected to put on probation. It's a 2-year process, I think, in Knoxville, where, I have meetings with the conductor regularly. So that's going to be my focus. Like, how can I be successful here? I don't know their culture. I don't know what their political culture is like. For all I know, it's a right-leaning orchestra that doesn't program according to the whims of politics. Honestly, have no clue. And I think my superpower will be caring about that as little as possible. I want to go in and sound great all the time. So if there are obstacles, I'll deal with them, and I'm sure my views are known. And if anybody wanted to know them, they could go listen to me on any number of podcasts, or read my posts, or read the articles about me. And I've just learned that I have to live with that. I don't. I have some regrets, but they're minimal. You keep alluding to the fact that you don't want to make this political, but I have embraced that this is a political quest for me as an artist. And going back to what we were talking about with Rostropovich and Shostakovich, it was political for them too. Arts are incredibly powerful, and they play a major role in shaping a nation's culture. And that is the high level game that I like to be playing. Just making the arts relevant, making them important, making them a useful tool for formulating young people. All of that has been stolen from us recently. And I want to play whatever role I can in restoring the arts as a part of everyday life and a part of the normal education of young people. Like, I see your posts, David, that you make from your house with your wife, and I'm like, that should be normal. Like, this kind of fun and joy in a house, that is normal to me. Having that as part of your life, the thing that you do, not your work, though it is our work, it's also your reason for being. That's what I am worried about. That is the obstacle, is that it has been taken away and used for a political agenda that I don't think makes any sense. So, rather than take the high road, I'm ready to do battle. But the best way that I can battle this is just to play beautifully. It really is that simple. My best thing that I can do is not post or go on podcasts, although I love doing those things. What moves the needle is my playing. So I have to lean into that. And now I have another stage to perform from. And along the way, I have gained a lot of followers who have said, I am coming to see you if you win this job. I am going to come see this. And I'm like, Knoxville management, you should be looking at that. Like, this is getting more and more relevant. People want me to win this. And now I did. We need to find these people, get these people, bring in their friends. Like, people get interested in orchestras when they know the players, just like they get interested in sports teams when they know the star players, the athletes. That's a lot of people from high school, for example, that I haven't talked to in a while, I heard from today, who are sports fans, who've been saying, I've been following and everything you've been doing. I think it's such an injustice, this and that. But these are people who understand sports and games and excitements, and that there's a way to reach normies with this. And I feel like posting my whole process for the last 7 weeks has revealed this grand potential for reaching normies. These are the people we need. So much of the music content is just made for other musicians. It's echo chamber content. It drives me nuts. I see you nodding because you know exactly what I'm talking about.
This is such an important. I'm sorry, I hate interrupting, but this is such an important point.
Go.
Musicians need to stop playing for other musicians. That is not your audience. It's something I really appreciate about what you've been doing, is that you've actually built an audience that is there to listen to you. They want to hear what you are offering. It's this. I've talked about this with so many people at this point, but this the analogy is the glass bead game. I'm not going to get into that. I've talked about that in other episodes, but it's this. I'm going to create something, and it's just going to be for the other creators, and those aren't actually the people that you're trying to attract. This is supposed to be a way that you connect to the culture, and not everybody in a culture is a creator. So you are absolutely right. I want to triple underline this point for anybody listening. It's so crucial. Stop playing for other musicians. That's not your audience. That's a great point.
Yeah, and just to take that one step further, a lot of the content that people try to make to reach normies is incredibly corny. It's very TikTok-y and just comedic and inauthentic. So, these people are not as creative as they think they are. What I try to do is say, okay, if I'm going to post my playing, what is the best way to make a quality post that actually sounds good and is going to get people to stop scrolling? So I bought a Zoom microphone for my iPhone that plugs into the bottom, and I didn't like it at all. It didn't sound any better. I sent it back. So I figured out that if I just clip my iPhone with the forward-facing camera, play a little something, zoom in on my fingers instead of my face, because, it kind of looks strange when I play clarinet. It's not a beautiful instrument to watch somebody play. It's not like the cello or the violin or something like that. It's kind of, my eyes bug out a little bit. So I just, focus on the fingers, and I just slap it into Final Cut Pro, and I drag a reverb from Logic on there, like the vintage concert hall chroma reverb. It only takes a couple minutes to do that, and it's very presentable. It's not a studio recording. I actually experimented with that, setting up in my recording booth with my expensive microphone, and it didn't really sound any better than my iPhone with a fake reverb on it. So I said, this is good enough for posting. And I just kept putting them up there, and people love it. Like every time I put up some Bach cello suites, and they would get hundreds of likes, and huge accounts would be retweeting them. I'm like, geez, like I used to shy away so much from posting myself from my iPhone, because I was like, this isn't good enough. It doesn't sound as good as my playing on the stage at the Nashville Symphony. And I was like, so what? This isn't that. This is X.com. Let's figure out what works. That's a huge part of being a creator, is just throw something out there. You have no idea what kind of response it's going to get. And the stuff that comes back, learn from that. On X, you don't get applause. You don't get a vibe in the room. You get likes and you get virality. So it's a game. It's like a video game. This is a new stage. And I was like willing to cater my playing and my talking and my narrating towards that audience. That's what we're trying to find, underscoring the point that we're both making now. If this is about building audiences, that's what you're doing with your podcasting. That's what I'm doing by being your guest and making my own content. But the most interesting content is authentic content. And if say what you want about how I've played the game and the feelings I've hurt and the mean or nasty things I've said recently, it's all very real. It's my real life. I'm not a Twitter anon, though sometimes I post like one, and I really wish I were one so I could say what I'm really thinking. I'm like, I got to go out there with my own name and my own face into the world and stand by everything I do here. I think that is something people appreciate about the arts, because so many artists are so fake. People are getting tired of this. And people can tell when they're looking at a classical musician who's performing with their gesticulating and their highly affected playing, that it's not the real thing. And somehow I think people hear my playing and they're like, that guy really knows how to play, And then I go into an audition and I play for an audience of musicians, for a jury of my hopefully future peers, and they also get it. In that situation, your audience is a bunch of musicians. But again, like I said earlier, I'm playing for them to prove that I'm good enough to be one of them was the wrong approach. Turning them into an audience of normies and saying, hey, listen, this is good playing that comes from the heart. This is coming from a guy that knows how the music goes, who's thought really deeply about what this is supposed to sound like, who's practiced a lot, who has put a lot of his life into this. That's what breaks hearts. It's not the fast excerpts, the technical mastery that really blows people away, though that's important. You have to be able to, land your triple axles, as it were. But it's those Pines of Rome's and those Rachmaninoff Second Symphonies and those Brahms Third Symphonies, where it's like playing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star up there. It's simple, something that a child can understand. It's something that a grown, possibly jaded musician who's been sitting behind a curtain listening to a lot of bad players all day can finally say, yes, this one, this player, I know nothing about him or her. I don't know where he or she is from, how many years experience, but that's what I want to sit next to. That's what I'm going for. Whether it's on X or in a lesson or in a chamber performance, real playing. So circling all the way back to what you said, We are playing for regular people. That's who we want to fill our concert halls. That's who we want to follow us on X. That's who we want to make friends with in our communities. Because you're like me. You're married. You're a father. I try as hard as I can not to be some eccentric, phony artist in my life. I am a regular guy with a wife and 3 kids who goes to mass every Sunday, homeschools his kids, washes his own car, mows his own lawn, goes to my kids' dance recitals. Like, that's where the joy in life comes from for me too. I have a balanced life, and maybe sprinkling a little bit of that in with my audition prep makes people realize, yeah, this guy's not a phony. He's not trying to put on a show here. This is just who he is. Arts are, going all the way back to what you said about Rostropovich, it's something about who you are. It's not what you do, it's what you are. And that's why this feels so great, because I now am a symphony musician again. That was taken away. That is what I was. And now, once again, if all goes according to plan, that is what I am about to become again. And that is a big, big deal to me. It doesn't matter if I'm in the Knoxville Symphony or the Nashville Symphony or the Boston Symphony where I have played, or the Detroit Symphony or the Chicago Symphony. The Brahms Symphonies are the Brahms Symphonies wherever they're being played. And I have a beautiful opportunity right a couple hours down I-40 to play in a beautiful hall with people who seem great. And that has made me come back to life in a way that I have been just dead for 5 years, man. It's been rough. And to come back like this against the youngsters, like the guy that was runner up to me, he is a young player who studies with my teacher from USC, who I have heard wonderful things about this young man's playing. And he was who I was worried about, was a guy like that. A guy from one of the premier studios with a great teacher and a hungry attitude. And, I had to prove that I have something that's worth, that's a little more reliable than that. And that these kids will have another chance. But for this one, for me, this was a destiny issue for them. So it's tough competition, but I needed to win this. I was desperate in a very real way to get this, and a little desperation never hurt anybody.
I did want to ask you on your posts, and I'm asking. So I had a few people who had watched our episode privately, and I'm going to articulate. I don't agree with the criticism, but I want to articulate it, and I want to get your perspective on this. One of the things that, and I think I even saw some people who were commenting under your posts were reacting to, you had a very, and again, their words, not mine, sort of aggressive, I'm the best, I'm going to win sort of predisposition that some people were a little put off by. And I would be curious to get your thoughts on the way that you've been presenting some of the posts you've been putting out, and then I'll kind of give my take. But I want to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, I know about that problem. Like, there's the put up or shut up aspect of posting about this. And I don't explicitly come out and say I am the best, but it's like, look, I have the tread on my tires. I have done this. I know exactly what I am. Like, I am one of the elite clarinetists of my generation. Like, it doesn't really help me much to say that out loud, but I do say that on X. Just there's real room for that criticism, David, for sure. But I do have to explain. I feel like sometimes, look, my accomplishments here to the normie, they don't know what makes somebody good. It's like, part of it is I have played on Netflix shows that you've heard. I have played in a major orchestra, and I'm trying to attract an audience of people that know I'm serious. Like, I'm serious about this. I've worked hard, and I have what it takes to win. Like, I put up a post about Knoxville where I said, I expect to be the most qualified guy that's auditioning for this. Like, I can't imagine that I won't be. That doesn't mean I'm going to win, but just, I'm calling a spade a spade. I can't imagine that, most of the people that have my experience level are already seated in other orchestras, and they're not going to look to take a step into Knoxville if they're already in Atlanta or Nashville or Indianapolis or Utah or something like that. This would be a move, a downward move for them. For me, I have no place to go but up. This is a unique situation where I already live here. And I did want to express, yeah, I have what it takes to win this. I have the skills. I know what I'm doing. So yeah, I also have an ego. I mean, you have to have some of that. You have to believe that you are capable of winning. You have to believe in what you're playing. You can't just be too humble all the time, though. I've been humbled. I have the necessary humility to be vulnerable, and I have the respect for the composers I'm playing. But yeah, I also think, you know what? I like the way I play. That's why I play like this. I like my interpretations of these pieces. I think this is how these pieces are supposed to go. I think this is the best possible version of what this sounds like. So does it take a little bit of arrogance? Sure. But some people are inspired by that. So if there's haters, it is what it is.
Yeah, actually, and that triggered a thought in my head. I wanted to read a quote that I had come across on X. This is from Doug Wilson. Doug Wilson is the pastor of Christ Church in Moscow, Idaho. I'm a fan of his. He's a cigar smoker, so I'm automatically just drawn into that.
Nice.
If you smoke cigars, I already like you like 15% more. But he had put this out, and I thought this was absolutely correct. And I'm tying this into the way that you've been presenting some of this. Desperate times call for faithful men, and not for the careful men. The careful men come later and write the biographies of the faithful men, lauding them for their courage. Sometimes there's sort of like a time and place for everything. This is something that I go back and forth on because of my age, because I'm 26. Sometimes if I'm bombastic, that can come across as arrogant because it's like, you're 26. Like, what the hell do you know? And okay, fair enough. But sometimes there is a time and place to say, especially in your case, no, I am good. I'm going into a competition, a form of combat, if you will. I need to have the headspace of a winner. I need to have the mindset of somebody who's going to go into the arena. And even if I fail, I'm going to fight in a way that is honorable and noble and really does put my best forward. And that's a very masculine archetype to follow through on. This is something, and I'm not trying to be insulting when I say this, but people who are more feminine or effeminately predisposed don't relate to that, don't see that. And that's not always, like I say, there's a time and place for everything. I'm even doing it right now. I'm caveating. I'm like, well, sometimes if you're like that all the time, obviously that's going to cause problems. But if you're trying to accomplish something and you're serious about it, especially as a man, and you're a seasoned father and a seasoned husband, that is a mindset that you have to have in order to conquer. And that's not a bad thing. I'm curious to get your thoughts on
Absolutely
that.
agree.
Okay.
Completely agree. This is a longer conversation for another time, but there's a masculinity crisis in the arts. And yes, art is war. That is the way to think about it. This is your war against everything ugly and fake. This is the only way to win it, is with arts, for me anyway, because it's the only thing I know how to do at this level. And, I was tapping into the bolder, more masculine excerpts, like Capriccio Espagnol. I had to play that. That's a matador stuff. You want to sound macho. You want to sound big and strong. But you can juxtapose that with the more delicate styles. And if you can do everything, then that just shows your high level thinking, that you're the winning thinking, that I can take on any role here. And keep in mind that my persona disappears when I play. This is another thing. People might not understand my personality as a speaker or a writer or a poster or whatever, but when I play, I am disappear. That's the beautiful thing about art. I take on the role of the thing that I'm playing. Like when I play Mother Goose this season, when we get to the Beauty and the Beast movement, I'll be playing the role of a princess there. You will hear the most delicate feminine sounds imaginable coming out of a seasoned father who, likes to post videos of himself bench pressing in a gym, because that's the beauty of art, is stepping aside from this ego that you have to carry to survive, how difficult it is to do this at this level. And yeah, if I chimp out every once in a while on X, fine. It might But the caveats that you're talking about, I I have a bold playing style, a risky playing style, where it puts people a little on edge sometimes because they're like, I don't know what he's going to do out there. He's going to swing for something, and sometimes it's going to be a little ugly or it's going to be a little much. But then every once in a while, it's like, oh my gosh, man, that was awesome. What you just did was so inspiring. I've never heard anybody go for that. It's like, yeah, on the flip side of those is the strikeouts. I'm not a baseball player who's trying to get to first base every time. I'm a home run hitter. It means I get some strikeouts. And that's a matter of my playing style. And I showed that in an audition and it did win. I have played for a dozen years professionally in orchestras and I was highly regarded. It's what I do when I post playing of pictures or videos of myself playing. I'm going for something. And if it's a dud, so what? There's always another chance. This isn't like one performance is one performance. It's not a painting that's going to hang in a museum forever. It's you play it and it's gone. It's instantly gone. It exists only in your memory. You have to play it again. If you want something lasting, you have to compose something. So yeah, I know about this criticism and I think about it a lot, how to be personable enough and interesting, but a little bit of a fighter. I mean, I'm Italian. It's in my nature. I'm a little bit of a beast. And but just taming that in the right way is part of how I do my art. And I'm actually quite an affable guy and I will stick up for you. And I love to furiously debate my interpretations and what I think is beautiful and what it means to be a man. But when I get out there and play, it's also quite delicate when it has to be. So it's the total picture.
Yeah, there's so much more to say. I would another time love to get into the crisis of masculinity in the arts. This is something that I talk about off podcasts with people all the time and trying to garner some attention to. Actually, this is kind of a spoiler. Later this month, I'm recording with Fin de Villiers, who's the British sculptor, and he's done a lot of work on these.
I follow him.
Yeah. So people will. I'll have to continue that conversation, and you and I can continue that another time. But just to kind of wrap that segment up, to your credit, again, you did win. So people can hate all they want, but success is success, and whether you hate it or whether you love it, you have to acknowledge it. I say this to my students all the time. You can be a hater, but success is success, and you have to tip your hat to people when they accomplish that. The last question I've been asking for this cycle of episodes, which are now a little bit more infrequent with everything going on in the nation, but that's that's something for another time. The last question: what's something practical that you would like people to take away from this conversation, or how can people take this conversation after listening and apply it practically? I'm always interested in practical applications to people's lives. I think it's the most important thing. You can listen to a million podcasts, but if you're not taking away good information, it's absolutely useless. So what's a practical message you'd like to leave people with?
I will use the quote that is often stated on Twitter that you can just do things. And the way you can do things is you can just do them over and over. Another thing I post on X is pictures of sourdough bread. Try to put one up every day. And that is a thing that I actually do every day where I say, this is something that my family needs to eat. And how can I get a little better here? That's all I ever do with my bread, with my playing. Like I said earlier, with my daily recordings leading up to the audition, critiquing my recordings and trying to fix them. It's like, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel every day. I'm just trying to do a little better than I did yesterday. I'm a fan of Jordan Peterson, who is, I think one of his 12 rules for life is compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. So I'm just trying to beat the man I was yesterday. He's my biggest enemy. I'm trying to, strip him of his imperfections. And that's a really practical approach to art is, you're practicing every day is just trying to get slightly better and play that out over a lifetime, whether you're writing software, you're doing podcasting, you're writing, you're exercising. That's the unprofound, really profound advice that I would use to answer your questions. You could just go do that. And if you do it over 7 weeks consistently, You can go from where I was the last time we talked, where I said, I don't think I could ever win another audition again against kids like this. You can change your mind and say, maybe I can. Maybe I can just go out there and do it.
James Zimmerman, thank you so much for coming back. A beautiful part two. What an amazing follow up to your story. I hope people take away the advice that you've given. I'm really looking forward to seeing your platform continue to grow. We need more superstars in the arts, and you're doing a phenomenal job. So thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me, David.